Hey, I want to talk today about mental health advocacy. First, I want to say thank you for bearing with me. Ever since spring has started, my allergies have been awful, and it's difficult to make videos when you're sniffling and coughing. And so I appreciate your patience because it's quite frustrating, but I feel like my message is important, and so I just try to push through it. And I plan on trying to go live every day. So I want to talk a little bit about mental health advocacy. I didn't start out on social media or Facebook to be a mental health advocate. It sort of happened by accident. As I've talked a lot about my lives, I have depression, I have bipolar, I have ADHD, I have all sorts of things. I'm on the spectrum. And I was frustrated for a long time with the way I was treated by people, especially in a work situation. And I felt alone and I felt angry. And but I had no way of expressing that anger. So I held it in. And when I started on Facebook back a few years ago, um, at first I was sharing, just everyday things like selfies, and I wasn't sharing about mental health because I was really afraid of what people would think because at that time I was only connected with people I personally knew. So I didn't want people to judge me more than they already were judging me. So I shared things about depression, but I was sort of subtle about it and vague. And then I found that um, when I did start sharing personal things about mental health, that I got a lot of positive feedback. And it was about, in the beginning, it was about me and validation and talking about whatever was going on with me. Um, and then I created a blog. And so through writing, I was able to discuss mental health, and I realized that my message was reaching people. And that was really, really exciting because I felt like at the time, my writing was going well on my blog, and on Facebook it felt like I wasn't being heard. It felt like my message wasn't coming across because maybe the people on my Facebook at the time didn't understand what I was doing, and I didn't really I wasn't quite sure what I was doing. I didn't think of it as mental health advocacy at the time. Hello, thank you for everybody for joining. I didn't think of it as mental health advocacy. So I would share things about myself, and people were somewhat supportive, but I didn't feel like I was getting the support I needed. And but I continued to start talking about mental health, and I continued to blog and on Instagram and all this other stuff, and I started slowly to connect with other mental health advocates, those suffering from mental illness, the disability community, therapists, and it started off with Instagram actually. I added a whole bunch of writers and counselors and therapists, and then I really started to connect with people on there, and it went really well. Hey, Carolyn, how are you? So I was really connecting with people on Instagram, more so than Facebook. Um, but it was exciting, and I started to build my confidence, and I started to realize that it was more than connecting with people that I knew personally. That I had to connect with anybody, whether I knew them or not, because when you connect with others, you're networking, you're inspiring each other, you're learning. A prime example is I started watching other people's Facebook lives and learning how to do it. So for example, instead of interacting directly with the comments during the video, I just talk as if I'm lecturing, and then I will answer the comments later. That way, I'm focused. Um, so just those sorts of things, um, and having people encourage you, because I think when we share mental health things and we're an advocate, we do feel self-conscious, and there's a part of us that says, maybe I've shared too much. Maybe what I've said is too personal. Um, so to have that encouragement, to have people say, no, it's not too personal, and no, we want to hear it, and yes, you're helping people, propels me to go further. So I'm just delving into sort of the history of advocacy, and then I'm going to talk about the feelings surrounded by that. So so I was frustrated with Facebook for a long time because the people that I was communicating with were not giving me the support at what I felt I needed, because they couldn't, because they're not mental health advocates. And they don't understand mental health, and it's not their thing, and I wouldn't expect them to understand it. So I was frustrated, and I'm not sure how it came about, but I decided to start just adding anybody I could see that was connected to mental health, to writing, to disabilities, to therapists, anybody I could find. And I'm very OCD, I'm very sort of obsessive, and I just literally just added thousands of people, which sounds crazy, but I literally added like thousands of people within a period of about 1 to 2 weeks. And then through that, excuse me, through that, um, all of a sudden, my post went from getting like 4 or 5 likes to 100 likes. And I want to say something, and I know it's not about validation, but it's important that my message was getting across, it was being heard. So my reactions were increased, my messages, and all of a sudden people were other advocates were messaging me and asking to hook up, to collaborate, to go on live, and this had never happened. So I was all of a sudden like overwhelmed by all of this attention, because again, like, my original intention honestly was just to sort of get my feelings out. It was therapeutic. I actually really didn't think that it was helping anybody else but myself. I looked at it as when I was sharing things about mental illness, I was helping myself. I didn't think that it was affecting anybody in a positive way in the very beginning, and admittedly, it was about validation. It was about getting likes, and it was about getting support. And somewhere along the way, I realized that was actually helping people. And like I said, it's only been like 2 months or something like that. And then it has gotten to the point where it's so overwhelming in a good way. Like I can't even like wrap my mind around everything that's happened. But so all of a sudden, I'm in the spotlight. And I'm starting to realize that this advocacy thing is about, it's not about me, it's about other people. And I have to remind myself that when I share things about mental health, that it's not about me, it's about the people who are reading my posts. And sometimes just because someone doesn't react in a certain way, or just because someone doesn't react at all, doesn't mean that they're not seeing it. And that could be a positive or a negative thing. I know that there are people who have made negative comments on posts that they did react on. So there's a good side and there's a bad side, and I try to ignore any negativity. But the other thing as well is talking to other life coaches. I've done that several times, and I'm really inspired by them. And for those that have talked to me personally, I thank you so much for that, because you've definitely helped me. And the more I think about it, I would love to do something like that as a career. I would love to be able to um, be a life coach because I think that with some work and training that I could do very well. Um, so much has happened. Um, I've started a mental health Facebook group, and I'm going to leave the link in the comments. And that has been, it's only been, what, 4 or 5 days, and it's very, very active. Um, so in regards to mental health advocacy, I still am at a point where in my own mind, I don't quite know what I'm doing that's having such a positive result other than being honest and saying how I feel, because that's really all I can do is just be honest. Um, and I think I want to go back a little bit to why advocacy is so important. Like I said, I felt alone for many, many years, and I know what it's like to live in that stigma, to feel like you don't have any friends, you don't get any support, you live in fear because because you know that if somebody were to find out you have mental illness, that they will judge you, and you feel powerless and you feel like you don't have a voice. So my job as an advocate, and I don't get paid for it, you know. My job though as an advocate is to be a voice for those that can't speak for themselves, whether it be mental health or whether it be disabilities, because they fall through the cracks oftentimes. They they're not heard, and then sometimes I have to step back and take care of myself, I think. Um, so I'm learning this advocacy thing. I'm not I'm not perfect, and I'm learning along the way. And I hope those that are fellow advocates, I hope those that are life coaches can sort of help guide me through that. Um, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Because sometimes in dealing with other advocates, sometimes I see things that I don't like. For example, like I've seen things like asking people if they've been suicidal in a public forum, which I don't like. I think that's a very private thing. So there's certain things. So again, it depends on the advocate. I try to use my experience and the pain that I went through and the sadness to hopefully somebody can relate. And I was talking to somebody and I was telling them about how frustrated sometimes I am about the platform of Facebook and how you can feel ignored and how there's an algorithm. And they mentioned that what was more important was that the individual impact you make on somebody. So just like right now, this live, the amount of likes I get or the comments is less important than somebody messaging me and saying, "Hey, you know what? I really could relate to what you said. You're saying what I can't say." That's way more important. That individual impact that we make on others. Um, and then sometimes it's the impact you don't know. That's the most important. Um, because a lot of people who have mental illness or mental health problems or disabilities, because they live in fear, are less likely to put themselves out there, less likely to message you, less likely to react because they are self-conscious. And I respect that. You know, I understand. It's taken me a long, long, long time to put myself out there. It's difficult. It's difficult for someone like me to go on video because I felt in fear for so long. I mean, I've said it, but I don't like the way I look or the way I speak, or the way I come across. And I've learning to accept myself, for who I am. Um, so this is really, really important to me. And although sometimes, I make some pushback, some negativity, I'm not going to stop advocating. I'm not going to stop talking about my story because it's about me. No, not sorry. No, take that back. I'm sorry. I'm not going to stop talking about my story because it helps others. I got lost for a second. Um, and this is my therapy. In fact, I have made more progress doing these kinds of things than any kind of therapy. I think therapy can work for some people, but for me, building a support network, going on live, writing, connecting with people personally is far more important. Because I know when I was in therapy, this is the things that we talked about. You know, she wanted me to have relationships and connect with people and to put myself out there, and I'm doing that. It's funny because I saw this lady for about a year or so, and then things happened. I couldn't see her again, but she basically said to me, you seem like you're doing so well. Like, why do you need me? Um, which is a weird thing to say to your client, but she asked me what I was doing differently, why I'd made so much progress, and I told her it was the writing, and it was connecting with people, and it was talking to my friends, and it's the beautiful thing is it's free. I mean, it's like I'm not working right now. I'm broke, but I can get on here and it's free. Somebody can message me, and it's wonderful. And but I think part of mental health advocacy, if I'm being totally honest, is not allowing the ego to get in the way, not allowing it to get to my head to say, I'm great. Look at all these people. Look at everything that they're saying, and look at the comments and the messages. No, it hasn't. I have to take myself out of it and make it about you. And that's hard to do because I think as human beings, we want to take credit. We want to look good, but it's to be humble. And as a God person, I have to be humble. Um, so yeah, I don't know what I want to do moving forward. I certainly know that I am so proud that I'm a part of a mental health community. I didn't see because I was thinking I think a lot. And I was thinking to myself before I went to bed last night that it's, it's hard for me to explain, but it's like there's these two worlds. It's like, okay, I thought of it like this. It's like kind of like New York City. I've never been, but it's like New York City. And there's the regular side of social media. There's like the everyday people, your friends, maybe they're posting pictures of their vacations or their pets or their food or whatever. And that's like Times Square where everybody is, and where all the tourists are, and it's open. Whereas the mental health community is sort of lesser known to most people. The average person isn't doing what we're doing, or seeing what we're seeing, or posting what we're posting. It's almost like Greenwich Village or something. It's sort of a more underground culture within social media. It's very interesting. Because when I talk to a lot of people about social media, it's overwhelmingly negative, and they'll talk about politics, or they'll talk about how inane some of it is, and I see that, but I also see a lot of positivity every day on my feed. I see a lot of positive quotes, a lot of awesome Facebook lives, a lot of people supporting each other. So sometimes I complain about social media, but it's what you make it. It's social media is what you make it, right? Um, and you can either choose to put out negative vibes or put out nonsense, or you can choose to use the platform to your advantage and to help people. And this is the best way to do it. I mean, I've said it so many times, but there's no other way to reach this amount of people this quickly than on Facebook, right? Or Instagram. In your comments, I want to ask you if you advocate. How do you advocate? What are the ways that you advocate on social media? What platforms work best for you? Do you prefer Instagram? Do you prefer Facebook? Um, but here are the things that I think I kind of want to talk about that I struggle with social media. And and I realize that we're a community and we're all here to help one another. But I still struggle myself with comparing myself, let's say, to other advocates, because I in my head, I see, for example, that they're posting similar things, more so on Instagram than on Facebook. So they're posting similar things as I am, and yet they're getting, three times the reaction. And I'm wondering to myself what it is that they're doing that I'm not doing. And I realize that's sort of negative and it's counterproductive. But I do wonder sometimes. I do wonder, um, what they're doing differently. And so I just want to know what people. We all have our own approach. The other thing I want to know is what propelled you to be a mental health advocate. Do you know somebody in your family? Do you yourself suffer? I mean, if you're comfortable saying it, what propels you to be open about mental health? Um, the stigma, like I said, the stigma is the main reason why. First of all, I advocate for mental health because I want to make people feel less alone. I also advocate for mental health because I want to break the stigma because it's so hurtful. Um, and I want to delve into a topic that I talk about a lot, and I will continue to talk about, and that is mental health advocacy in males and men. I notice that there are very few men out there who are advocating for mental health. There are some, and there are some really good ones, and maybe I've yet to find them. But it seems to be a woman's game, and the inspirational quotes and the discussion seems to be surrounded by women, seems to be geared towards women, and that's great. But it feels as though we as men are being left out of the conversation. And I'm wondering, um, most of my people I communicate with are women. How do I reach men? What's the best way to reach men? If men aren't willing to talk about mental health and there's this fear about men and mental health, um, how do you reach them? Uh, I know I talked to somebody earlier and we talked about, going on live, another guy, which I think is going to be great. Because I think, as guys, we have unique issues that women may not have. And part of it is the fear. And I lost my brother to suicide, and I look at like life or death. Um, and we as men are so hurtful with one another. We perpetuate stereotypes. We call men who talk about mental health weak. It happens, all the time. There's this sort of I don't know if you guys read online. We read these articles about alpha males and beta males and how men are supposed to be strong, men are supposed to be persistent, and men are supposed to get what they want and be successful, and men aren't supposed to be weak and talk about their feelings. Um, and because women don't want that. That's basically what a lot of men say. Women are not attracted or don't want to be friends or don't want to be around men that are too sensitive. That seems to be the message that a lot of men are getting. Um, my personal experience is that I relate much better to women, and being sensitive and being honest and being vulnerable and being myself has gotten me closer to women, not further from women. And you guys can stay in the comments, but I feel like women appreciate men who are sensitive and who are open and willing to be vulnerable because I think some of the macho bravado is bullshit, and it goes back to mental health, and it's really really hurting men because men feel as though They can't talk about these things. And then sometimes I feel as though some women encourage men to talk about mental health or their feelings, and then when they finally do, then they don't feel heard or understood. So somehow we have to get around that because mental illness doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care whether you are a man or a woman or you're black or you're white or you're gay or you're straight or what language you speak. It doesn't care. We all we all can suffer from mental health or mental illness. We what was I going to say? Um, Men can be just as emotional as women, maybe sometimes more so. It's just the difference is that we are taught to not express those emotions. So maybe the reason why people are responding to me in the way they are is that most men are not doing what I'm doing. Most men are not willing to put themselves out there because it is you you do become vulnerable, and I certainly feel like there's probably a lot of guys that wouldn't talk to me because they're comfortable with the things that I say, and I don't care honestly, because I'm going to continue to say my piece. But that's something. This is something I really, really want to maybe start writing about because I felt like even in the beginning when I was sharing my issues with depression, I felt like people were listening to me less because I happened to be a male because they were expecting me to talk about sports or whatever, or talk about just not talk about my feelings so much. So it seems it's okay for women. The attitude seems to be it's okay for women to be emotional and to talk about mental health and to support one another and to share, silly inspirational quotes, but it's not okay for a man to do so. And that seems incredibly unfair to me. So for the men out there who are advocating, who are sharing parts of themselves and who are being emotional, like I totally commend you, man. I I just want to be in your corner because I feel like we need to encourage each other and we as men need to speak out more. But it's really hard because like we live in a society where the media is huge. We live in a society where just turn on the television. You turn on the television and you'll see a commercial where let's say a mother is making lunch for her kids and vacuuming and the man is out there driving a truck and being in construction. The attitude seems to be this is your place. Women are nurturing and can have compassion and care, and men go out there and make the money and be tough. And some of us can't be tough. I couldn't be tough if I tried. I've never, again, as a kid, like I couldn't do it. I couldn't play sports. I'll never forget when I was a kid. I was bullied a lot, and I remember this was like I was 8 or 9 years old, and I remember the girls in the class said to me, you can hang out with us, and I decided that that wasn't a good idea. I didn't want to hang out with the girls because it was going to make me look weak. Um, and it's the psychology goes all the way back to there. So, if you see why I'm uncomfortable around men, it's because of that history of being treated a certain way at that age. If I had known that most of my friends would be girls, I probably would have chosen to hang out with the girls. But at that age, it's a lot of fear. So there's a lot of reasons why we think and behave the way we do. And I think a lot of it does go back to childhood, to feeling different and feeling like girls were the only ones that accepted me. Um, so going back to advocacy, it all goes back to using all those experiences to make a difference in people's lives. Um, I will continue to use all my platforms to speak out. I will continue to listen and be there for anybody that I can. Um, Sometimes here's something that I do need to talk about though. Um, there was a time when I was only had like 100 and so people, and I used to get frustrated because people wouldn't respond to my messages quickly enough, or they wouldn't respond at all, or they wouldn't reply to comments or whatever. I have now realized that because I am so swamped with messages that I cannot possibly respond to everyone in time. When I'm getting like, 7, 8 messages on Facebook and 6 or 7 on Instagram and trying to answer comments, I'm only one person and I only have so much energy. So that helps me to understand that when I try to contact someone and they don't get to me, it's usually not personal. It's just because I just cannot, you know, even though I want to. And I've been told many times that I shouldn't be compelled to answer every single message. Um, because I know that there was somebody on my Instagram who was struggling and she was trying to contact me and I had so many messages I couldn't get to it, and the person thought that I was ignoring her, and it really made me think because I had felt just like her. So again, I truly care about everybody I'm in contact with. It's just that there's just so many people and only one me. I'm only one person, only one human being, and I'm trying to keep up. But that sort of and that creates mental health struggles with me. Not being able to handle being in the spotlight. I talked to a life coach about that yesterday. Is being overwhelmed because I'm not used to it. I'm not used to anyone paying attention to me. I'm not used to praise. And I'm thinking, how long is it going to last? When is everything going to fall apart? Um, because it's interesting. People who I've been on both sides. I've been on the extremely depressed, isolated side, and I've been on the side where I've been in the spotlight. So I think I can speak from both experiences. And I would say that for me, when I only had like 150 people and nobody was liking my post and nobody was answering my messages, I felt totally alone, totally isolated, totally frustrated, checking my Facebook constantly and seeing no activity and feeling unheard. But I've also been on the other side where I've been so overwhelmed that I don't know what to do. And it creates like a panic attack in me. And people who are on that other side where they feel isolated and alone might look at that as complaining. They might say, well, I wish I had that many likes or I wish I had that much activity. But there's a downside to it. It's very, very tiring. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of energy and you have to put yourself out there and you got to be willing to say it all. And most people aren't. Um, it's like being I don't know, it's like being in a zoo and having people gawk at you to a certain degree. Um, and I didn't expect it, and I wasn't prepared for it. Um, and I'm trying to process all of that so that I can be a better advocate. Um, because I genuinely want to help people. Because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to just completely live in despair, not be able to get out of bed, not leave the house for days, not shower, not communicate with people. And I know that there are people probably watching this who may not react or comment or even message me who are going through that same thing right now. And my motto is that you're not alone. You may feel you're alone. People may make you feel like you're the only one dealing with it, but you're not alone. That was biggest thing about advocacy for me was people coming back to me and saying, "Hey, I can relate to what you say." That never happened before. I said, I would make a post and said I'm bipolar, and people would come back and tell me that they have bipolar too, or they have autism too, or they've felt so depressed that they can't get out of bed. Um, I can't even describe how that feels because I wish I could cry, but all those times where I, would pray or I would write or I would just in the old days sit and chain smoke cigarettes and think about how depressed I was, um, and feel as though there's this whole world out there and I'm not a part of it, and not realize how many people feel that same way. It is such a lonely feeling. Or to go to a bar, let's say on a Friday night, which I've done, by yourself because you have no one else to go to, and the feeling of seeing other people together and just feeling like a loser, just feeling alone, like feeling even though you're in this crowded bar full of people, 100 people, let's say, but you feel totally lonely. And the feeling of rejection when you try to walk up to someone and talk to them or get to know them and they blow you off is a very real feeling. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Um, or going to a party, let's say, and going to a party, and even though you're in a room full of people, you feel alone. Because loneliness is a state of mind, as opposed to just literally being alone. You can be alone and not be lonely. Wait, let me take that back. Yeah, you can be alone and not be lonely, but you can also be with people and be lonely. You guys have to bear with me because I don't have a script, so I'm going off the cuff, which is how I make my videos. So, um, yeah, you never know the impact that you have on other people, and that's why advocacy is so important. Because I know there are people who have had impacted me in some way, and I never told them, and they didn't realize. I know that I remember seeing something on Facebook about someone working with disabilities, and it propelled me to go and enter a degree program. I never told this person, and they didn't talk to me directly about it. I just happened to see it. I knew this person personally, and I was like, I could do that. I like that. That sounds good. And within a month or so, I entered this disability program. So you never know how your words are going to affect people. And that's why it's important to speak out. And it's also important for those that aren't mental health advocates to listen. And I realize that validation, that it's not about that. But sometimes we just want to be acknowledged and we want to be heard and we want to know that we're cared about. And you may not realize it, but silence is a response. So sometimes silence really, really hurts. When you are putting yourself out there to people that you know and trying to seek their support and their understanding, and they don't respond, um, that hurts. It really, really hurts, especially for those who suffer from mental health, mental illness. Um, Nobody likes silence, and I think society is oftentimes silent because they're uncomfortable with the topic. And my goal is to get people talking about mental health because for those who aren't in the know, it may seem depressing, but it's real and it saves lives. For somebody who's lost a brother to suicide, this is serious. It could save lives. So I'm going to end it like this and say, for those who don't understand mental health advocacy and those who see it in a negative way, uh, That's fine. You can look at it. You can not like it. You cannot understand it. You can see it as depressing, and you can unfollow me. You can unfriend me. Whatever you want to do. Um, but be respectful at the same time. You know, be respectful that this is what I want to do, and these are my feelings, and this is my experience and my story, and that's all I ask. I no longer expect people to react a certain way. The only thing I expect is just respect, because I respect others, and everyone deserves respect. So that's all I ask. Um, because I feel as though there are people who feel uncomfortable with the subject and try to shut it down. And uh, I'm not going to stop talking about it because I know that it's making a difference. And if some people are uncomfortable with it, then I don't say it, then that's too bad. And that's the nicest way I can say it. Um, it's just to have some empathy and to understand and some understanding. And I need to hear this as much as I need to hear this as well, and that is to think before I speak. And that applies to social media and what I post. Think before I message somebody or I post, um, because I want to be positive. And I think it may have been a life coach or maybe somebody pointed out to me that I was now a figure and I had a responsibility and that people looked up to me and I had a responsibility. And that's the thing is I do have a responsibility. If I'm a figure, if people are looking up to me, if people admire what I'm doing, then I have to set the example and be positive. And I can't do that if I am reacting in anger or hurting people or shaming people because I've been shamed publicly, like on Facebook. And there's nothing worse than that feeling. Because if you have an issue with somebody, and again, I'm talking to myself, then you take it up with them privately. You don't do it in a public forum. So my goal is to create understanding, encouragement, love, positivity, and to make this a positive space. So I think I want to end this by thanking everybody so much for being such a support, for helping me spread mental health advocacy, for understanding. And as I always say, I message me anytime, comment anytime, as long as it's positive. And I'm willing to collaborate or go online with anybody who wants to. So if you want to go online with me and discuss mental health or disabilities or depression, I am more than willing. I got plenty of time right now. So please message me, and thanks for listening.